They called it a family built on faith. In truth, it became a cult built on control. Here's what they never told you about Cody and Robin Brown's so-called spiritual empire, and how it collapsed from worshiping itself. There are few sights more pitiful than an adult trapped in the amber of arrested development, except perhaps the parents who preserved her there. Watching the later seasons of Sister Wives is to witness precisely this, the triumph of suffocation disguised as nurture. The Brown household, once a self-proclaimed experiment in love's abundance, has become a mausoleum of infantilized grown-ups. None more emblematic than Aurora, the eldest daughter of Cody and Robin Brown. Aurora is, by all accounts, 20-something, a number that should denote independence, experience, and the ability to navigate one's own life without parental approval. Yet every moment she spends before the camera betrays a spirit still nervously asking permission to breathe. The scene in which she shyly giggles to her parents about being asked to be someone's girlfriend is not merely awkward television. It is a case study in emotional stunting. One almost forgets that this is not a high school confession, but the declaration of a full-grown woman who, by now, should be more concerned with paying bills than seeking daddy's blessing for hand-holding. The embarrassment is almost mercifully mutual. Viewers do not recoil from Aurora alone. They recoil from the ecosystem that bred her timidity. Robin and Cody, ever the architects of their own dysfunction, have engineered a home in which dependence is virtue and autonomy a betrayal. Their philosophy of parenting seems less about guiding children toward adulthood and more about constructing obedient reflections of themselves. Compare Aurora's docility to the demeanor of the older Brown children, those who escaped earlier from the gilded cage. Savannah and Truly, though younger, carry themselves with an ease that suggests exposure to reality. Their independence stands as silent indictment of the household ruled by Cody's vanity and Robin's fragile martyrdom. In a family defined by inequity, it appears that the more one is loved by Cody, the less chance one has at becoming a functioning adult. Cody and Robin's domestic theology is simple: submission masquerading as sanctity. The patriarch's affection, like divine grace, must be earned through unwavering respect and visible loyalty. Disagree and you are cast out, as Janelle's sons discovered during the pandemic, when their father demanded exile for the crime of independence. Yet Robin's children remain perpetually sheltered, protected from consequence by the same maternal manipulation that cloaks weakness as virtue. It is almost comical to recall Cody's supposed moral reasoning. He once condemned his other wives for allowing disrespectful sons to remain at home, even amid global crisis. Yet in the same breath, he permitted Robin's adult offspring to linger indefinitely, jobless, friendless, untested. The hypocrisy is not accidental. It is performance art. Cody's parenting, if one can call it that, is less a matter of principle than of theater, a staged morality where loyalty is rewarded not with love, but with proximity to his ego. Robin, meanwhile, perfects the art of the passive tyrant. Her protection of her children from reality is presented as maternal devotion, but the effect is narcotic. Every hint of independence is neutralized under the syrupy language of care. Her children, swaddled in endless reassurance, are raised not to navigate adulthood but to revere the parents who stunt them. When one considers that her eldest daughter is approaching a master's degree yet remains socially petrified by the idea of dating, the extent of the damage becomes clear. Education, apparently, is no antidote to overparenting. The tragedy of the Brown household lies in its double standards, rules that shift according to bloodline and convenience. Robin's offspring are afforded eternal adolescence. Janelle's and Christine's were booted into adulthood the moment they questioned their father's authority. The pandemic served merely as a convenient narrative device for Cody's selective cruelty. "Obey me or leave" became his household commandment. Yet Robin's children were miraculously exempt from divine wrath. Observers with functioning memory recall Cody's sanctimonious outrage when Janelle refused to eject her sons Gabe and Garrison from the home. The patriarch, suddenly a prophet of plague, cited safety and respect as justification for dividing his family. The same man, however, now presides contentedly over a home teeming with adult dependents. The difference, of course, is obedience. Robin's children respect him, which is to say, they fear him and adore their mother. And so they stay, sheltered by hypocrisy and by the illusion that loyalty equals love. This disparity exposes the heart of Cody's delusion. He does not wish to be a father, only a deity. His children are not individuals with lives to lead, but disciples, whose devotion validates his fading authority. Every conversation, every rule, every episode of televised chaos serves to remind the audience that Cody's version of fatherhood is simply narcissism set to a script. It is tempting to pity Aurora for her childlike demeanor, but pity is misplaced. What we are witnessing is not merely immaturity but performance, a family act designed to preserve the myth of the sweet and pure daughter under the gaze of the cameras. The awkward conversation about her boyfriend was not spontaneous. It was staged, like all things in this carefully curated tragedy. Robin, ever eager to project saintly motherhood, orchestrated the moment to remind viewers of her household's moral superiority. The act is so transparent one half expects a halo to flicker above her head each time she feigns surprise. The irony, of course, is that this manufactured innocence only highlights the rot beneath. The entire spectacle reeks of the same manipulation that once sold audiences on Cody's spiritual leadership. Behind the trembling voice and nervous smiles lies the machinery of a family desperate to remain relevant and paid. TLC, for its part, continues to capitalize on the discomfort, selling dysfunction as redemption. The producers understand what the Browns do not, that the public no longer watches for love stories or faith journeys, but for the slow-motion implosion of a family drunk on its own mythology. To defend Aurora's lack of independence by invoking economic hardship or generational housing is to miss the point entirely. Multi-generational living is no crime. Infantilization is. There is a vast gulf between sharing a home and surrendering one's adulthood at the door. The Browns' version of living at home is not about financial prudence but psychological captivity. In their household, obedience is currency, and ignorance a virtue. Some sympathetic observers suggest that Aurora's behavior stems from trauma, a reasonable assumption given the household's volatility. Her darting eyes, nervous laughter, and near-panicked compliance bear the hallmarks of a child conditioned to avoid paternal wrath. It is perhaps true that she was raised in a state of chronic emotional surveillance, where even affection came with conditions. If so, her immaturity is not a failure of will, but the inevitable outcome of a home where fear masqueraded as order. And yet, trauma cannot excuse the continuing charade. The Browns have chosen to parade their dysfunction for profit, turning psychological scars into season finales. What might have been a private tragedy has been converted into a public commodity. Each awkward smile and trembling confession sold to the audience as relatable content. The result is a spectacle so grotesque it almost becomes anthropological, a study of how modern television rewards arrested development. Every empire has its mythology. For the Browns, it is the belief that their chaos carries divine purpose. Once, polygamy was their chosen theater for this delusion, the grand spiritual experiment that would prove their exceptionalism. Now, monogamy has become their penance and their prison. Cody and Robin, the self-appointed soulmates, are trapped in the very fantasy they built. Their children, meanwhile, pay the price, condemned to live out their parents' failure in perpetuity. The camera does them no favors. Cody's attempts at paternal wisdom sound increasingly like the ramblings of a dethroned king clinging to relevance. Robin's teary monologues, once intended to evoke sympathy, now only emphasize the emptiness of her victory. They won the family war and inherited a wasteland of dependence. Watching them insist upon their moral superiority while their adult children struggle to perform adolescence is a masterclass in delusion. It is worth noting that not every adult child remains so paralyzed. The OG-13, as viewers affectionately label the children of Cody's earlier marriages, exhibit an independence that borders on defiance. They live, work, marry, and, crucially, think for themselves. The contrast between them and Robin's offspring could not be starker. While the older generation navigates careers and families, the younger hovers eternally on the brink of adulthood, too frightened to step off. In most families, parents dream of raising competent adults who outgrow the nest. In the Brown household, flight is betrayal. The result is a new breed of dependency, adult children who mistake submission for safety. It is a dynamic familiar to any student of authoritarian systems. Control disguised as care, obedience mistaken for love. The Browns, it seems, have reinvented feudalism for the domestic sphere. To call the Browns unself-aware would be generous. Their every televised appearance suggests an almost supernatural ability to miss the point. Robin weeps about the pain of division while clutching the spoils of victory. Cody sermonizes about unity while alienating his remaining children. The hypocrisy would be comic if it were not so cruel. The audience no longer sees parents, only actors trapped in roles they no longer understand. And still, the cameras roll. TLC, ever the opportunist, continues to milk the spectacle, knowing that the discomfort it provokes is the source of its power. The network has no incentive to rescue its subjects from humiliation. After all, the Browns' dysfunction is their only remaining currency. Aurora's nervous giggle, Cody's self-pitying monologues, Robin's trembling martyrdom. Each moment of human regression becomes another episode, another ad break, another season of televised decay. There is an unmistakable melancholy beneath the laughter and the sarcasm. Aurora's immaturity, while absurd to watch, is not a joke but a symptom. She is the living proof that parental control, when stretched beyond its natural limit, becomes cruelty. A 23-year-old woman reduced to a trembling child is not merely an awkward character. She is the unintended monument to her parents' failure. Cody and Robin's household is not a home. It is a museum of delayed development, curated by two people too self-absorbed to see what they have done. The tragedy is generational. The longer the Browns remain entangled in their televised melodrama, the further they drift from genuine growth. Their children's potential withers under the weight of performance. Independence, curiosity, and rebellion, the necessary ingredients of adulthood, are replaced by fear, obedience, and the desperate need for parental approval. The result is a lineage of adults who act like teenagers and parents who act like toddlers. Every dynasty falls, but few do so as publicly or as slowly as the Browns. What began as a televised experiment in plural love has devolved into a cautionary tale about the perils of control. In the name of faith and family, Cody and Robin have crafted a world where maturity is punished, dependence rewarded, and the illusion of virtue replaces the substance of responsibility. Aurora, nervous and smiling before the cameras, is not an outlier but a symbol. She represents the final product of a philosophy that mistakes infantilization for protection. Watching her cling to childhood under her parents' approving gaze is to see the end result of a family that worshipped obedience more than love. The Browns once claimed to challenge societal norms. Instead, they have become a parody of them. Proof that the greatest form of imprisonment requires no walls, only parents who refuse to let their children grow up. History is generous with tyrants, but seldom with fools. The former at least possess the dignity of ambition, the latter only delusion. Cody Brown belongs firmly in the second camp, a self-anointed patriarch whose authority exists only because someone pointed a camera at it. His wife Robin is both his greatest disciple and his most efficient accomplice, a mirror reflecting every inch of his vanity back to him, polished with tears. Together they have constructed a theology of self-importance, one so ludicrous that even the producers of Sister Wives must occasionally wonder whether they are filming a tragedy or a parody. Cody's descent from charming oddity to unhinged autocrat has been one of reality television's most consistent storylines. Once, he was the adventurous patriarch experimenting with plural marriage in the modern age. Now he is the ghost of his own mythology, ranting about loyalty and respect to an ever-shrinking congregation. The transition was not sudden but inevitable, the logical conclusion of a man who confused leadership with ownership.
His household has long operated under divine law, with Cody cast as the misunderstood prophet whose every whim carries moral weight. He invokes faith when convenient and discards it when challenged. The pandemic, for instance, provided a convenient revelation. Obedience to him became a spiritual duty. Those who questioned his decrees, chiefly Janelle's sons, were branded as rebels, while Robin's children, docile and sheltered, ascended to sainthood. The result was a household divided not by disease but by devotion. Cody's interpretation of fatherhood is little more than the management of loyalty. He offers affection in installments, withdrawing it the moment his authority wavers. Love for him is transactional. Respect, compulsory. When his children grow old enough to see through the performance, they are cast out as heretics. Yet, even in exile, they remain crucial to his mythology, proof that disobedience leads to downfall. It is a psychological pyramid scheme in which the only constant reward is proximity to his self-regard. Every tyrant requires a priestess, someone to translate cruelty into doctrine. Robin fulfills this role with near-biblical precision. She presents herself as the eternal victim, trembling, tearful, and saintly, forever misunderstood by the ungrateful wives who failed to appreciate her purity. Her genius lies in her ability to weaponize fragility. Each sob is a sermon, each quiver of the lip a declaration of moral superiority. Behind this quivering exterior, however, lies an impressive strategist. Robin did not merely marry Cody. She colonized him. Her entry into the family was less a union than a corporate takeover disguised as romance. The earlier wives, Janelle, Christine, Mary, provided labor, children, and the illusion of communal harmony. Robin provided the storyline. She understood far earlier than her husband that reality television is not about truth but narrative control. To remain relevant, she would need to cry on cue and suffer beautifully. Her children's immaturity, her saintly patience, her endless monologues about family unity, all of it sustains the fiction of moral superiority. Even her spending habits, from overpriced dolls to melodramatic decor, serve the mythology. The household as sacred theater, every trinket a prop in her performance of virtue. The tragedy is not that she believes this fantasy, but that she requires others to believe it for her. Together, Cody and Robin practice a peculiar religion, a hybrid faith combining self-worship, paranoia, and selective scripture. The commandments are simple. Cody is always right, Robin is always wronged, and everyone else is replaceable. The structure mirrors that of authoritarian cults: charismatic leader, loyal consort, expendable followers. In the early seasons, the family's plurality provided balance. Multiple wives, multiple perspectives. But as dissenters left and the circle narrowed to Cody and Robin alone, the echo chamber sealed itself. Their monogamous love story is not the triumph of destiny they claim, but the natural collapse of a closed system feeding on its own delusions. When Cody pontificates about respect, what he means is submission. When Robin weeps about family unity, what she means is obedience. The spiritual vocabulary remains, but the faith itself has decayed into a vanity project. The divine calling once used to justify polygamy has been repurposed to sanctify self-pity. Watching them invoke God's plan while hoarding money, houses, and airtime would be comic if it weren't so transparently manipulative. The great irony of Cody and Robin's partnership is that it fulfills the very prophecy that once justified their union. They truly deserve each other. Each reflects the other's worst impulses. Cody, desperate for validation, finds in Robin an audience that never stops clapping. Robin, craving control, finds in Cody a man eager to mistake her submission for love. Together they form a perfect feedback loop of need and narcissism. The prophet preaching to his mirror. Their interactions have the rhythm of ritual. Cody rants, Robin nods tearfully. He demands loyalty. She offers pity. Every argument ends not in resolution, but in emotional theater. Even their affection appears performative. The hand-holding, the public declarations of eternal love, the overwrought displays of intimacy. These are not gestures of closeness, but proof of possession, broadcast to the world as if repetition could make it real. In a perverse way, their marriage has achieved monogamy's truest form. Two people completely isolated together, surrounded by the ruins of everyone they used to need. For every self-proclaimed prophet, there must be heretics. Christine and Janelle, once central to Cody's empire, have become convenient symbols of betrayal. Their departures are framed not as liberation, but as apostasy, the wives who gave up on family unity. The children who sided with them are cast as wayward disciples. The narrative serves both Cody and Robin beautifully. He retains the aura of martyrdom, the righteous man abandoned by unfaithful followers. She, meanwhile, emerges as the last loyal believer, enduring suffering with saintly grace. It is a theatrical division of labor. He plays the wounded God, she the weeping Madonna. Together, they rewrite history until the audience can barely recall who started the war. Of course, the truth is simpler. Cody's empire collapsed not because of betrayal, but because of gravity. His spiritual dictatorship was never sustainable. His charisma, never profound enough to mask his pettiness. The other wives grew tired of worshiping a man whose revelations changed with his mood swings. Christine's departure, far from treason, was an act of survival, the first rational decision in a family long allergic to reason. By now, Sister Wives has evolved into something stranger than documentary. It has become a televised confession booth where repentance is replaced by branding. Each family member competes to appear most virtuous under the unforgiving glare of the camera. Cody rebrands his tyranny as leadership, Robin her manipulation as devotion. The result is moral theater of the highest order, the illusion of spirituality performed for an audience that long ago stopped believing. Consider Robin's perennial lament, that the family's dissolution breaks her heart. Her tears are flawless, her voice trembling just enough to convince the undiscerning. Yet her actions betray calculation. She benefited from every rupture, every exile, every moment that shifted Cody's focus exclusively to her household. If grief were currency, she'd be a billionaire. And Cody, mistaking her tears for worship, continues his crusade of self-pity. He speaks of forgiveness while nursing grudges, of unity while dividing households, of God's will while rewriting commandments to fit his schedule. The man who once preached equality among lives now devotes his sermons to justifying favoritism. It is theology rewritten by narcissism, a revelation tailored to one man's reflection. Robin's control is quieter but no less absolute. She rules through emotion, an art perfected over years of weeping and high definition. Her greatest weapon is fragility. Each time she cries, Cody grows more indignant on her behalf, more distant from everyone else. It is a manipulation so seamless it resembles instinct. Whether by design or reflex, she has ensured that empathy toward her equals allegiance to him. Her domestic domain has become the holy sanctuary of the family's new religion. Soft lighting, endless decor, the faint scent of martyrdom in the air. Here, the rules are simple. Speak softly.
adore Cody, and never contradict the narrative. The children learn early that love is performance, and that independence is rebellion. Even their romantic lives are subject to parental review, as Aurora's televised humiliation demonstrated. To the outside observer, this might look like dysfunction. Within the cult of Cody and Robin, it is righteousness. The home has become a temple to dependency, its altars adorned with designer dolls and misplaced virtue. If Cody Brown's story were not so absurd, it might be tragic. His need to be revered has consumed everything that once made him tolerable. Where he once thrived on chaos, he now suffocates in the silence of his own making. The ex-wives he mocked are thriving. The children he dismissed are building lives without him. The prophet, stripped of followers, stands preaching to empty pews. His decline is visible even in his posture, the defensive gestures, the strained attempts at humor, the eyes that flicker between self-pity and rage. Reality television has turned his delusion into spectacle. But even spectacle has limits. What began as a quasi-religious experiment in plural love now resembles the final act of a Shakespearean farce. A fallen king ranting at ghosts, convinced they still listen. It is easy to dismiss Cody and Robin as mere caricatures, but their dynamic reveals something more insidious. The way narcissism thrives under the guise of faith. Their household is not unique. It is simply televised. Many authoritarian systems, religious or otherwise, rely on the same formula. Elevate one man's insecurity to sacred law, reward obedience with conditional affection, and call the resulting misery tradition.
Cody's sermons about respect echo the logic of every petty despot who mistook compliance for love. Robin's sanctimonious fragility mirrors the enablers who keep such men enthroned. Together, they demonstrate how domestic control can masquerade as moral order, how faith can be twisted into a stage play that justifies cruelty. But even mirrors eventually tire of reflecting. Robin's demeanor has shifted. The wide eyes now flicker with something resembling regret. One sees flashes of awareness that she has won a hollow prize. With no rivals left to outshine, her victory tastes like ash. Cody, deprived of competition, has no one left to impress but her, and she has begun to see the man behind the myth. The irony is exquisite. Robin fought to be the favored wife, only to end up the only wife, a status that transforms adoration into imprisonment. Without the chorus of sister wives to validate her suffering, her role as martyr loses meaning. What remains is a lonely woman sharing a house with the ruins of her ambition. Cody, ever the narcissist, interprets her withdrawal as rebellion and doubles down on self-pity. Their once performative affection now resembles hostage negotiation. The show continues, of course, because collapse sells. But beneath the surface smiles, the prophecy is fulfilled. The prophet and his mirror are devouring each other. Every authoritarian system ends the same way, not with rebellion, but with boredom. The subjects leave, the followers drift away, and the tyrant is left shouting into silence. Cody's empire has reached that inevitable stage. His proclamations echo off empty walls. His sermons convince only himself. Robin, his once adoring disciple, now mirrors not admiration, but weariness. Together they preside over a hollow kingdom built on nostalgia and reruns, clinging to the illusion that their story still matters. It does, but not for the reasons they believe. The Browns have become a morality tale for the modern age, proof that when self-worship masquerades as faith, the congregation eventually walks out. In the temple of Cody and Robin, love was never divine, only reflective. And now the mirror is cracking. Every crumbling dynasty eventually discovers the same truth. The show must go on, even when the stage is on fire. The Browns have long since lost their faith, their unity, and, for the most part, their dignity. Yet the cameras still hum, documenting a ruin that refuses to admit it's over. What began as a social experiment in spiritual pluralism has degenerated into a morality play without morals, an empire of make-believe sustained only by editing, nostalgia, and denial. Enter Christine, the patron saint of moving on. Once the dutiful wife tending Cody's children while he courted new conquests, she now radiates post-divorce enlightenment, at least between ad reads. Her metamorphosis from neglected spouse to empowered heroine has been marketed as the franchise's redemption arc, but one suspects the halo is rented. She speaks of forgiveness, calls Cody a good man, and insists that love has triumphed. This would be touching if it weren't absurd. The man she absolves publicly humiliated her, starved her household of affection, and weaponized religion to keep her compliant. Her sudden grace feels less like spiritual evolution and more like contractual obligation. When she smiles and suggests her new husband and Cody should hang out, one hears not serenity but script direction. Forgiveness is a virtue. Televised absolution is a strategy. Christine understands that the franchise thrives on narrative tension. She cannot be the eternally wounded ex-wife forever, so she has reinvented herself as the magnanimous survivor. It keeps her employable, if not believable. Viewers are told that everyone is healing. The word appears so often it could be a brand of essential oil. Yet genuine healing requires introspection, and introspection has never been a Brown family hobby. Instead, they stage reconciliation the way others stage Christmas specials: forced, glossy, and immediately forgotten once filming wraps. Cody delivers half-hearted apologies to the women he alienated, weeps on cue, and then reverts to blame within minutes. Robin murmurs about forgiveness while seething that anyone else dares to be happy. Christine sells positivity with a smile so rehearsed it could power a solar farm. The entire clan performs recovery, as though personal growth were merely another storyline to complete before sweeps week. The tragedy lies not in their inability to heal, but in their refusal to stop pretending they already have. They confuse being filmed with being absolved. If anything remains real in this circus, it is the children's quiet exhaustion. Decades of on-camera conflict have left them divided between two instincts: loyalty to parents who raised them and revulsion toward parents who monetized them. Some, like the older OG 13, have escaped into ordinary adulthood: jobs, marriages, anonymity. Others remain trapped in the gravitational pull of Robin and Cody's dysfunction, performing filial devotion for the family's remaining viewers. Aurora and her siblings still orbit their parents' collapsing sun, their adult identities postponed indefinitely. They have inherited not wealth, but weakness, an education in how dependency can masquerade as faith, and how love becomes indistinguishable from fear when lived under surveillance. In this sense, they are the truest heirs to the empire, proof that make-believe, if sustained long enough, becomes reality. Outside the central house of despair, Christine has constructed her own cottage industry of rebirth. She podcasts about empowerment, sells domestic harmony through social media, and performs joy with the zeal of a woman trying to convince herself it's genuine. The show presents her new marriage to David as cosmic justice, a bright counterpoint to the gloom of Cody and Robin. Yet the choreography remains identical: confessionals, orchestrated laughter, contrived dinners. Even freedom, it seems, must be content-ready. There is something faintly tragic about watching a woman escape one narrative only to build another identical in form if opposite in tone. The villain becomes the muse, the pain becomes branding, and the audience, ever forgiving, applauds the illusion of closure. In the Brown universe, authenticity is whatever survives the edit. Meanwhile, Mary drifts through the series like a historical artifact, too stubborn to leave, too peripheral to matter. She smiles through humiliations, declares independence from the man who publicly disowned her, and then spends every episode proving she still needs his attention. Her storyline, such as it is, offers the comfort of repetition. The same coffee dates, the same hollow affirmations of self-worth, the same tragic loyalty to a brand that outgrew her. If Christine represents rebranding, Mary represents residual inventory, kept around because deleting her would expose the show's cruelty too clearly. Her presence allows the audience to feel compassionate while still enjoying the spectacle. To understand why the Browns persist, one must abandon psychology and study economics. The show is not a family drama. It is an industry built on dysfunction. Every quarrel generates footage, every reconciliation, advertising space. The Browns' misery funds their mortgages. Their spiritual crises pay for their children's tuition and Robin's decorative excess. TLC, ever pragmatic, has realized that the public no longer watches for inspiration but for anthropology, to observe, at safe distance, the implosion of an American experiment in ego. The Browns oblige by renewing their contracts and rehearsing their heartbreaks. Viewers complain of boredom, yet continue to tune in, compelled by the same morbid fascination that draws crowds to slow car wrecks. The religious scaffolding that once justified their choices has collapsed entirely, though its vocabulary lingers like incense after Mass. Cody still mutters about God's plan, Robin about our culture, but these phrases now function as camouflage, spiritual jargon to hide the banality beneath. Their church excommunicated them years ago. Their doctrines shifted with each marital crisis, and yet they still perform belief as habit. In their world, faith has become another prop, alongside the confessional chair and the sentimental montage. It is invoked not to illuminate the soul, but to dignify the storyline. If the early Browns used religion to seek transcendence, the late Browns use it to rationalize paychecks. The audience, once enchanted by the novelty of modern polygamy, now treats the show as communal hate-watching. Online forums buzz with forensic analysis of every glance and insult. Viewers no longer debate theology. They trade psychological diagnoses. Cody's narcissism, Robin's manipulation, Christine's performative optimism. Each becomes a case study in the pathology of reality television. This secondary ecosystem of commentary has replaced the family's original purpose. The Browns are no longer pioneers of alternative living, but characters in a collective therapy session for the disillusioned public. The spectacle offers catharsis. If these people can ruin paradise so thoroughly, perhaps ordinary viewers can forgive their own smaller failures.
By the current season, Cody resembles less a patriarch than a haunted relic. His sermons ring hollow, his authority evaporated. He gestures toward leadership as though miming a role he once knew. The only audience left to believe him is the camera, and even it seems tired. What remains of his charisma survives only in Robin's anxious gaze, the last believer clinging to a crumbling creed. There is poetic justice in his downfall. He once declared himself head of a household too large for mortal management. Now he rules a kingdom of two, trapped in mutual resentment. The prophet who sought eternal glory has achieved something rarer: televised irrelevance. Robin's triumph, too, curdles in her hands. She won the war for Cody's devotion only to discover that possession is not partnership. With the other wives gone, there are no rivals left to validate her suffering, no chorus to echo her virtue. The tears still flow, but now they fall into silence. The woman who once fed on comparison has no one left to compare herself to. Her home, once presented as the family's sanctuary, feels increasingly like a mausoleum. Large, echoing, filled with relics of episodes past. The golden children wander through it like ghosts of unrealized potential. Robin, having built her identity around being the favored wife, now faces the unbearable question: favored by whom? And for what? The Browns' narrative has become cannibalistic. Each new episode devours the last, re-editing the same grievances into new configurations. Viewers are fed reruns disguised as revelation. Cody apologizes, someone forgives, someone cries, and the cycle resumes. Authenticity died seasons ago. What remains is self-reference. The family now exists solely to discuss its own existence. Reality television has always blurred the line between confession and advertisement, but Sister Wives perfected the art of erasing it altogether. The Browns no longer live and then film. They film in order to live. Their emotional vocabulary has been replaced by production notes, closure, arc, resolution. They are citizens of a synthetic world, perpetually auditioning for redemption. Perhaps the cruelest irony is that Christine, for all her newfound independence, remains the franchise's most reliable magician. She can turn any humiliation into empowerment merchandise, any heartbreak into ratings. Her insistence that Cody is a good man puzzled audiences until they realized it wasn't sincerity, it was bait. The outrage it sparked reignited discourse, and discourse keeps the empire alive. She understands the first rule of reality television. Sincerity is optional. Engagement is everything. The Brown saga has outlived the culture that birthed it. Once a curiosity about alternative marriage, it now functions as a mirror for the audience's appetite for collapse. Americans watch not to learn but to gloat, to assure themselves that their own family dinners, however awkward, are paragons of sanity by comparison. The Browns have become public catharsis, their dysfunction a national service. In this sense, Cody and Robin achieved immortality of a sort. They transformed personal failure into communal entertainment. They will never truly disappear, because reruns never die. They merely migrate to streaming platforms. Immortality through syndication, a fitting reward for prophets of the trivial. What remains, then, of the grand experiment? A handful of adults play-acting maturity, a patriarch railing at shadows, a network stitching old footage into new morality tales. The doctrine of plural love has withered into the cult of personal brand. The children, the wives, even the viewers are footnotes in a saga about the corrosion of sincerity under the heat of constant exposure. Cody and Robin stand at the center of it, surrounded by the ghosts of spouses and the debris of convictions, insisting the story still means something. Perhaps it does, just not to them. Their empire of make-believe has become the perfect monument to an age that mistakes attention for grace. And so the Browns persist, embalmed in reruns, eternally relit for another confessional. They are no longer a family, barely even people. They are exhibits in a morality museum, curated by producers and sustained by curiosity. Each season adds a new plaque. Aurora's awakening, Christine's forgiveness, Robin's tears, Cody's redemption. Again, if there is any lesson left in their story, it is not about faith or marriage or even television. It is about the peril of confusing narrative with life. The Browns built an empire on the belief that performance could substitute for truth. They were right, until the performance became their only reality. Now, standing amid the ruins, they smile for the cameras one more time, rehearsing sincerity for an audience that already knows the ending. The empire endures, but only as echo. Its prophets are tired, its miracles rerun, its faith reduced to ratings. The House of Brown will not fall in flames or scandal. It will simply fade, quietly, endlessly, into the background noise of the very world it once sought to astonish.
Subscribe for more.